I am going to write a novel, and I would like to bring you along with me for that journey. I have wanted to write a novel for as long as I can remember. It's always been on my bucket list as a thing to do, but it's never seemed like something I realistically could do until very recently, and I've never really put any solid effort into achieving that goal until the pandemic hit and I had all this time on my hands. So I made my first minor attempt at writing a novel in 2020, and I think I only wrote about 20,000 words or so, maybe only 5,000 to 10,000 words of which were actually part of the novel itself. That year I also wrote a ton of short stories and flash fiction that I did almost nothing with. And of course I have been writing my whole life because I've been in school my whole life, and I've been a part of creative writing classes and playwriting classes. And then I have written maybe 100 academic essays in my lifetime, but I've never written more than about 20,000 words on a novel draft. And lately I've just been in this mindset of actually doing the things that I want to do with my life. So even if this wasn't the perfect time to start writing a novel, I think I would do it anyway, because there really is no time like the present. Yes, I am still writing my PhD, which is a large long-term writing project, but I have managed to do a focused writing session every weekday for at least an hour and a half in the mornings, so I'm feeling pretty confident and consistent in my PhD writing routine at the moment. So I think I am right now prepared to add a little bit more writing to my daily schedule, and this should be like a fun, relaxing hobby style of writing, so I hope it won't add any more stress to my day. I'm also hoping to participate in NaNoWriMo this year. If you don't know what that is, that stands for National Novel Writing Month, which takes place in the month of November. There is a NaNoWriMo group that is dedicated to helping writers write the first drafts of their novels, or 50,000 words, in the month of November, so I plan on signing up for that challenge. And then folks in the NaNoWriMo community will also spend all of October preparing to write that novel so that they can actually accomplish those 50,000 words in the month of November. So October is called Preptober. Now you'll notice that this video is coming out in September, not Preptober, and that's because I wanted to first make sure that I had a solid enough story idea that I could prepare to write it and then actually write it. So I've had this novel idea floating around in my head for maybe the past at least 6 months or so. It might be more at this point. Mostly this idea has been developed on runs, when I'll go on long runs with my brother and I will tell him at length about this novel idea, and I've been getting more and more excited about it, and this idea has stuck around for a while, which is not usually the case, so I think this might be the one. This past week I sat down and watched a bunch of YouTube videos about how people come up with story ideas or determine whether their story idea is worth pursuing, and I spent a bunch of time taking notes in my little notebook. I want to tell you about the methods that I used to come up with this story idea in case you are also looking for a story idea and you want to join me on this novel writing journey. My original idea came from a TV show that I was watching, and this is a common piece of advice for people trying to find a story idea, is to turn to existing stories that you love and try to imitate those, but in your own style, with your own characters, with your own plot arc, in your own genre, etc. And this was a big takeaway from Brandon Sanderson's video, where he actually is promoting NaNoWriMo and offering tips for a successful NaNoWriMo. He tells us to find our favorite TV shows or movies and figure out what their beats are, and then stick your own story into those same beats. So first of all, my favorite TV show of all time is Westworld, and no matter how bad it gets with each new season, it will continue to be my favorite TV show of all time. And I really love the themes of Westworld and the thoughts that the robot characters are having throughout that show, but it doesn't have a story structure that I feel like I could accomplish because the first season is like quite mysterious. There's a lot of like time jumping and things like that I don't want to deal with in my own novel. And then this past year, I was watching the TV show Legion, and this is going to have like some mild spoilers for Legion, so I'm really sorry. Maybe just skip ahead a little bit if you don't want the TV show Legion spoiled for you. But in Legion, the main character, David, originally thinks that he has schizophrenia because he is seeing things that aren't there, and he thinks that he can move things with his mind, and it turns out he's actually a mutant. So he gets taken away to this like good guy's mutant facility to start honing his powers, and he thinks that he's a great guy. Turns out he actually was seeing things because he had this evil mutant in his head. So now he is like a super powerful mutant with this super powerful evil mutant in his head, and he thinks that he's the good guy, the only guy that can stop this horrible evil mutant that's been living in his head all of his life. So for the entire first season, I thought Legion was a superhero, and then in the second season, I found out that he was actually a super villain. And that switcheroo and the way that our mind can play tricks on us like that and turn us into the villain when we really think that we deserve love, and become a villain because we think that we deserve love and are trying to like force other people to love us to find it. I found that psychologically really interesting, and also narratively really interesting, that I can be thinking one thing of the main character so strongly for an entire season and then have it flipped on me for the second season and beyond. So that's really what I wanted to do with a novel, or preferably like a novella series, where at the end of the first book, the main character turns. So that's the original idea, and plotting this alongside Legion actually I found super useful, so thank you Brandon Sanderson for that writing tip. Next, I turned to this YouTube video from Dr. Brittany Cavallero, in which she offers tips for developing your next story idea. In this video, she says to write down 8 to 10 things that make a book an auto-buy for you. And I found that was super interesting. I wanted to write a story that was like the stories that I love and I can't get enough of, so I thought this would be a really useful exercise for fleshing out the like must-haves in this book. I managed to think of 8 things that if a book has one of these things, I will definitely pick it up. And then I wrote in the margins which stories that I love have this, and I bought that book or the TV series or whatever for that reason. So first of all, questions of free will and agency. This is heavy in Westworld, but also another TV show that I liked called Devs, and also in the Foundation series, for instance. The second one was psychological domestic thriller in a sci-fi setting. So this is books like Dark Matter by Blake Crouch and Foe by Ian Reid. The third one was it has a powerful female main character. So not just a female main character, but one in a position of power. And this might include books like the Drowning Empire series, which I loved, or She Who Became the Sun. The fourth one is themes of higher education and how to effectively teach or learn in an institutional setting. And that is present in Vita Nostra, which is probably my favorite book. And maybe you'll also start to notice that these are very specific things, and that is what she said to do in the YouTube video, is like find really specific things that are auto-buys in books. The fifth one is a will they won't they relationship between someone that's really kind and honest, but is in a position of power, and the relationship potential is with their subordinate. That is in things like To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, which I loved, but also in Lady Chatterley's Lover, which I also really liked. The sixth one is characters that are surprisingly smart or good at a thing, and it helps them succeed in some way, or in other words, an absolute genius that is also really down to earth. This I thought was particularly present in Patrick Rothfuss's Name of the Wind, where the main character like grew up as an actor in a traveling troupe, and then he uses those acting smarts and those like performance smarts to get ahead in life. The seventh one was an experimental form that isn't too confusing and isn't very postmodern, preferably. In other words, like I don't want it to comment on the fact that it is a book, so I don't want it using things like footnotes or like, I don't know, the author speaking to me in some way. Rather, I mean experimental form as in books like The Employees or The Fifth Season, where we don't see second person used a lot, and so it's really exciting when we see that used. Or some kind of strange epistolary novel. And then finally, the eighth thing that I really love in books is a dark weirdness, almost to the point of being comical or funny. This is something like The Library at Mount Char. It's like so weird and so dark that you're like laughing because you're like surprised and confused and it's kind of silly. So I would really love it if I could write those 8 things into the novel that I'm writing, because that would just make it like an instant buy in my books, so I hope that readers would really like it as well. And this last brainstorming technique comes from Abby Eamons here on YouTube, which I love her stuff, her content, and this one's a little bit more complex. It includes naming the genre, theme, protagonist, location, and vibe of the novel that you want to write. So I did go through each of these things. Firstly, for the genre, I wanted it to be a sci-fi with elements of horror, thriller, and maybe dark academia. For the theme, and Abby says that this is the thing that you want to just like scream from the rooftops because it's so true and you need people to know this truth about the world. So for me, in this book, it is that true agency and free will is when we are doing things not out of anger or loneliness or revenge or shame, but rather out of self-compassion and an expansive sense of self. And then for the protagonist, she said to write down something that they want, something that they fear, and then their misbelief. My main character desires belonging and love. That's kind of basic for now, but I hope to develop that later. She fears that she is an imposter or she's not her own self. She fears she is somebody else's making. It's gonna be like an AI robot fiction, so that's a very real fear for her. Finally, she believes controlling others means she is not controlled. The location, I want it to be at a research institution and university campus, so it's gonna be like urban and high tech. And then for the vibe, I was really lost on this one. I have like, I guess, a vibe in my head, but I can't really articulate it. I'm not really sure. Couldn't figure that out. However, Abby also recommended building a playlist, which I do have a playlist that I built for this novel idea quite a while ago. The playlist is about sort of becoming the villain and being okay with the fact that you're becoming the villain, because it means that you are thinking about yourself first and no longer just trying to serve others. And that's like the real transformation that I want my character to undergo in the first book. So I have a really strong idea of the emotional narrative that she is going to go through, from feeling like an everyday nobody to feeling on top of the world to feeling absolutely like an imposter that doesn't deserve to be here to feeling like, of course she deserves to be here, she's a god, and becomes legitimately all-powerful. Because it's gonna be kind of like a robot apocalypse story, I also went in and just like searched that into Spotify, because there's honestly a playlist for everything, and there are a ton of playlists for the robot apocalypse. So I'm gonna listen through some of those and see if there's any useful playlists for like the content of the book rather than the emotional transformation that I want the character to go through. So after I kind of had all of that figured out, and especially Abby's theme and protagonist beats, were very useful, I went in and just like wrote a really brief 1-sentence synopsis of my book, and then I wrote like a 2-paragraph synopsis of Legion from what I could remember of it and what I liked about it, and then I rewrote the synopsis of my book, and it took like 2.5 pages of writing to do that, trying to like keep it beat for beat with Legion, but maintaining everything I had already figured out about it, and I was extremely happy with the result. So I think that I have a story idea. I'm really excited about it. I think it could be really, really good if I execute it well. I have no idea what it'll actually look like on the page, but because I've never written a novel before, I am trying to like stick to the textbook way to do it. I don't want it to be formulaic, but I do want a formula to follow, and everyone here on AuthorTube recommends Save the Cat Writes a Novel and the beat sheet that comes along with it. So I bought that book. I am going to take this idea and I'm going to try to write out the beats of my novel in the Save the Cat workbook. And now that I actually know I have an idea that I think is worth pursuing and I actually feel like I could write 50,000 words on in November, I'm also going to sign up for NaNoWriMo, which I've never done before, so I'm not really a part of that community and I don't know what that's going to be like, but if I have like, I don't know, a friendship link or something, then I'll put that in the description box below this video. And this is going to be a bit of a series where I take you along with me writing the book. So today we talked about the story idea. Next time, I hope I'm actually going to be able to plot out the beats of this novel with Save the Cat. So wish me luck. I'm very excited. Come be my friend on the NaNoWriMo website if that's something that you do. And I look forward to writing my first novel and sharing that experience with you. If you're going to be writing a novel this NaNoWriMo, please let me know down below in the comments, or if you're writing anything this November and you're going to try to write that 50,000 word goal, meet that 1,667 word count goal every single day of November, then please let me know. I'll cheer you on. You can cheer me on. It's gonna be great. We're gonna be great. See you in the next video when I actually plot out and plan my novel. Bye everyone!